She left with someone she trusted. No struggle, no fear. No one watching thought to stop them. It was supposed to take minutes. When the sun shifted and she still hadn't returned, people told themselves the same lie we all do. She's nearby. She's safe. She'll be back. Then a scream cut through the air. Not from the child. From the adults who saw her first. She was being carried toward them, limp and silent, her face turned away. Whatever had happened wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It waited. Neighbors froze where they stood. Parents ran. Someone dropped to the ground before they even understood why. Because some things don't need explanation. Your body knows before your mind does. The person holding her said nothing. Didn't run. Didn't cry. Didn't ask for help. They had brought her back. And in that moment, before police, before questions, before the truth, one fact settled over the crowd with unbearable weight. The danger hadn't come from the dark. It hadn't come from a stranger. It hadn't come from far away. It had walked out in daylight, holding her hand. And the person who brought her back was the last person anyone suspected. This is not a story about a child who wandered off. It is not a story about a stranger hiding in the shadows. And it is not a story about a crime that went unnoticed. This is the story of Rukaya, a 7-year-old girl from Bauchi State, Nigeria, who survived an attack that should never have been possible in the first place. Because what makes this case unbearable is not only what was done to her, it is who did it. Rukaya did not meet her attacker by chance. She was not tricked by someone unknown. She did not cross paths with danger accidentally. She was taken by someone whose face she recognized, someone whose presence raised no alarm, someone who belonged where she belonged. That single fact shattered something deeper than public outrage. It shattered a belief. In many Nigerian communities, family is considered the first line of protection. Relatives are trusted without question. Children move freely between homes, guided by familiarity, not fear. That trust is the foundation of daily life. And in this case, it failed. Rukaya lived, but she lost something that can never be restored. Her future was altered in a way no child should ever endure. The nation reacted instantly. Anger, disbelief, grief. Protests erupted online and in the streets. Parents looked at their children differently. Communities began questioning the very systems they relied on to keep the young safe. This was no longer just one crime in one village. It became a mirror, a reflection of how superstition, greed, and silence can coexist alongside family bonds. A reminder that danger does not always arrive announced. Sometimes it comes with familiarity and permission. And as investigators would soon discover, this case was not only about violence. It was about belief, about desperation, and about how easily trust can be turned into a weapon. But to understand how this could happen, how a child could walk away in daylight and return forever changed, we have to go back. Back before the questions. Back before the outrage. Back to the life Rukaya was living before that day. Before her name was spoken on news broadcasts. Before strangers learned it through anger and grief. Rukaya was simply a child moving through ordinary days. She was 7 years old enough to run errands, old enough to recognize faces, old enough to trust what she had always been taught, that family means safety. Her days followed a rhythm that never felt dangerous. Morning voices drifting through the compound, the scrape of sandals on dry ground, laughter from other children nearby, rising and falling with the heat. Rukaya was known in the community, not as a headline, not as a victim, but as a child who answered when called, who listened, who went where she was told. She moved easily between homes, as children often do in Kempty. Aunties, uncles, cousins, neighbors who were family in everything but name. In places like Kempty, closeness is not questioned. It is assumed. Children are raised collectively. Adults are trusted collectively. Authority comes from familiarity, not distance. No locked doors. No suspicion in daylight. No need to explain why a child is walking beside an older relative. That is how trust is built here. Slowly, over years, reinforced by routine. Kempty itself is quiet in the afternoons. The sun hangs high. The air stills. Animals retreat into shade. Voices soften, as if the village is holding its breath. This is not a place where danger announces itself. Life moves gently, predictably, safely, or so it seems. On that day, nothing felt out of place. There was no argument, no raised voice, no sudden urgency, just a request. A familiar voice asking Rakaya to come along. A short walk, something small, something ordinary. No one stopped them. No one followed. No one imagined that this moment, so unremarkable it barely registered, would divide Rukaya's life into two parts. Because sometimes the most devastating acts do not arrive with warning signs. Sometimes they begin with a request that sounds exactly like every other one that came before. And then one ordinary request changed everything. They leave together in daylight. No hurry, no resistance. Just a child walking beside an older relative. Their steps unremarkable against the familiar paths of the community. At first, nothing feels wrong. Minutes pass the way they always do. Conversations continue. Life carries on. But time has a way of changing shape when something is missing. Someone notices she hasn't come back. Then someone else. At first, it's brushed aside. She's with family. She'll return soon. She's been there before. Trust fills the silence where questions should be. The sun shifts higher, pressing down with quiet insistence. Children begin drifting home. Voices lower. Eyes scan paths they've stopped paying attention to. An hour passes. That's when the waiting changes. A caregiver asks where she is. Another answers, but the answer doesn't quite fit. Someone says she was seen heading one way. Someone else insists it was another. The explanations don't match. Not exactly. Not enough to cause alarm, but enough to cause doubt. People start walking the paths, calling her name, listening for a reply that doesn't come. Each step feels longer than the last. Questions begin to form, but they remain unspoken, because asking them would mean admitting something is wrong. And no one wants to be the first to say it. The person who took her is asked where they went. The response is calm. Too calm. A place is mentioned. A reason is given. It sounds reasonable, almost practiced, but one detail lingers. It wasn't a place she usually went, and it wasn't necessary for her to go there at all. Still, no one intervenes, because in communities like this, intervention feels like accusation, and accusation feels like betrayal. So the search widens slowly, too slowly. Footsteps scatter. Voices rise. The air thickens with worry no one wants to name. And then movement. A figure appears in the distance. People turn. Hope flares brief fragile. She is being carried. Her body is still. Her face turned away. The crowd closes, and before anyone can stop it, silence spreads first. Then cries. Because before a single word is spoken, before anyone asks what happened, before understanding even begins, everyone knows. And when she finally came back, everyone knew something terrible had happened. For a moment, no one moves. The crowd stands still, suspended between hope and fear, unsure what they're seeing, but certain that something is wrong. Rukaya does not speak. Her body is light in the arms that hold her, lighter than it should be. Her head rests against a shoulder that does not tremble. A mother reaches her first. She stops halfway. What she sees makes her step back. Not because she doesn't care, but because her mind refuses to accept what her eyes are telling her. Another adult steps forward. Then another. Someone says her name. Once. Twice. There is no response. People begin talking all at once. Voices overlapping, climbing over each other in panic. Questions come faster than answers. What happened? Where did you take her? Why is she like this? No one waits for replies. A cloth is brought. Hands move quickly, carefully, as though speed alone can undo what has already been done. Rukaya is alive. That becomes clear. And yet, something essential is gone. The realization spreads without words. Faces change. Eyes fill. Some turn away. This is the moment denial breaks. Someone cries out that she needs help. Someone else is already running. The stillness of the afternoon collapses into urgency. A motorcycle is started. Another is flagged down. Her family surrounds her, forming a barrier against a growing crowd. Not to hide the truth, but to protect what remains of her peace. Fear takes over now. Fear of how bad it is. Fear of how far it's gone. Fear of what this means for her life from this moment forward. No one asks questions about belief or motive yet. No one speaks of money or intention. Those words will come later. Right now, there's only one thought. Save her. She is rushed away as voices trail behind her. Prayers, cries, names spoken aloud in desperation. And as the dust settles, another question begins to rise, quiet but relentless. It passes from one person to the next, from neighbor to parent, from whisper to accusation. Because the injury itself is no longer the only horror. The question everyone keeps asking is, who could do this? In the hours that follow, certainty disappears. No one agrees on what they saw. No one agrees on what they heard. And no one agrees on how this could have happened without warning. At first, the questions move outward. Was there a stranger nearby? Did someone from another area pass through? Was this an attack from outside the community? Rumors spread faster than facts. One story places an unknown man near the path. Another claims a vehicle was seen earlier in the day. Someone insists they heard shouting. Someone else says there was none. Each theory sounds possible. Each one falls apart just as quickly, because no one can explain one simple truth. Ruqayyah did not leave alone. As the community struggles to make sense of what happened, authorities are alerted. Word reaches local police. Officers arrive to a crowd already heavy with anger and grief. The scene is chaotic. Everyone has a version. Some versions contradict each other completely. Statements are taken. Timelines are sketched out, erased, and rewritten. Pressure builds almost immediately. News of the attack spreads beyond Kempti, across Bauchi State, across Nigeria. People demand answers. They demand arrests. They demand to know how a child could be harmed in this way and still be returned by someone who walked freely among them. Investigators face a problem. There is no forced entry, no evidence of a struggle in public, no sign that Ruqayyah was taken against her will. The case does not point outward. It points inward. Slowly, uncomfortably, attention shifts closer to home. The person who took her that day is questioned again. And again, their account remains steady, but details begin to fray at the edges. Small changes, inconsistencies that seem minor on their own, but heavier when placed side by side. Why that location? Why take her there at all? Why return alone? The motive, at first, makes no sense. There is no history of conflict, no obvious reason, no explanation that fits what has been done. At first, investigators believe the truth will be simple. It isn't. As outrage intensifies, the weight of the crime becomes impossible to carry. And then, under questioning, the story changes. Not all at once, not dramatically, but enough. Enough for investigators to stop taking notes and start listening. Because then a confession changes everything. The room goes quiet when the questioning changes direction. Up until this moment, investigators have been trying to understand how. Now they're asking why. The answers do not come easily. At first there is denial, then deflection, then long pauses that stretch until silence becomes heavier than words. When the confession finally begins, it does not sound like rage. It does not sound like panic. It sounds rehearsed. The suspect admits to taking Ruqayyah away from the community that afternoon. Admits to choosing a location where no one would interrupt. Admits that what happened was planned. But the reason is not personal hatred, not revenge, not a moment of uncontrolled violence. It is money. According to investigators, the suspect claims he was promised a large sum, wealth that would change his life, in exchange for something he was told held power. It was not belief passed down through generations. It was not tradition. It was deception, false assurances, whispers of quick reward, promises that preyed on desperation. Police later described it plainly. A crime driven by greed, disguised as ritual. There is no evidence of any system of belief behind it. Only manipulation. a person convincing another that harm could be exchanged for prosperity. And the cost of that lie was paid by a child. News of the motive spreads rapidly across Bauchi State, across Nigeria. The reaction is immediate and explosive. Outrage, anger, disbelief that something so irreversible could be attempted for something so empty. Parents hold their children tighter. Communities begin questioning conversations once ignored. Authorities face pressure to confront not just this crime, but the conditions that allow such lies to survive. Yet even with confession, the case does not fully settle. Questions remain. Who made the promise? Was anyone else involved? How many similar conversations happen without being heard? Investigators confirm some answers. Others remain unclear. And while one truth has been exposed, another lingers beneath it. That Rukaya's suffering was not caused by belief alone, but by a willingness to trade a child's future for the idea of sudden wealth. A transaction that failed in every way imaginable. And still, one question refuses to fade. How does a community protect its children when danger wears a familiar face? In the days that follow, the noise fades. What remains is the reality of survival. Rukaya is moved from one medical facility to another. Doctors focus on what can be saved, not what has been lost. Every decision is careful, every explanation measured. She lives. That fact becomes both a relief and a burden, because survival does not mean recovery. It means learning to exist in a world that has suddenly changed shape. Her family stays close, closer than before, watching, listening, trying to understand how to comfort a child whose future no longer looks the way it once did. There are questions no parent is prepared to answer. Moments when silence feels safer than words. Nights where sleep does not come easily to anyone. The trauma does not belong to Rukaya alone. It spreads outward through her parents, her siblings, her extended family, through a community forced to confront its own assumptions about safety and trust. Across Nigeria, the reaction is swift and intense. Voices rise in anger and grief. Public figures speak out. Citizens demand justice, medical support, and accountability. But even as a tension grows, another tension becomes clear. Justice is loud. Healing is quiet. Courtrooms, investigations, and punishment offer one kind of resolution, but none of them can restore what was taken. For Rukaya, the future now includes permanent adjustment, learning, adapting, relying on others in ways she never had to before. Her life continues, but on different terms, and the country watches closely, because this case is no longer just about one crime. It is about responsibility, about protecting children not only through laws, but through vigilance, about recognizing that danger does not always announce itself as violence. It sometimes arrives disguised as familiarity. As time moves forward, headlines fade, public attention shifts. But for Rukaya and those closest to her, there is no moving on, only moving forward. And in that quiet space between justice and healing, one truth remains undeniable. Surviving the unthinkable is not the end of the story. As the case moves through the justice system, some answers become official. Charges are filed. Statements are recorded. A name is attached to the crime. But resolution does not arrive with paperwork. Too much remains unanswered. Who first planted the idea that harm could be exchanged for money? How many similar promises are made in quiet conversations that never reach the police? How many warning signs are missed because familiarity is mistaken for safety? Rukaya's story forces a difficult reckoning. It asks whether trust alone is enough to protect children, whether communities have the tools to challenge dangerous ideas before they turn into action, whether institutions respond fast enough when the victim is young, powerless, and close to home. This was not a failure of one person alone. It was a chain of failures, social, economic, and cultural, colliding at the worst possible moment. The responsibility does not end with an arrest. It extends to parents, neighbors, leaders, educators, and systems meant to intervene early, before harm becomes irreversible. Because prevention is quieter than punishment. It requires listening, questioning, speaking up when something feels wrong, even when it is uncomfortable. Rukaya survived. That matters. But survival should never be the standard we accept for children. As her life continues, away from cameras and headlines, the rest of us are left with a choice: to look away once the story fades, or to confront what it revealed. So the question remains, not just for one community, not just for one country, but for all of us. What do we change so no child ever pays this price again?